evening. Welcome to the Fantasy Wildcard. I'm your host, Kev. You can follow me on Twitter at dynasty_goat. With me tonight, as always, is my co-host, Matt, who you can follow on Twitter at MattFFDynasty. Good evening, Matt.
Evening, Kev. You all right?
Very good, sir. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad. Obviously, just got through the wildcard weekend. As I mentioned last week, it's nice to just sit back and enjoy it as a neutral. Obviously, my Giants getting nowhere near the playoffs as usual. So, yeah, it was nice just to sit back and enjoy the football.
Fantastic, Matt. We'll bring in our other amazing co-host, Ali, who you can follow on Twitter at FFDynastyGrill. What's that top you've got on, Ali?
It could be a Buccaneers shirt. Very much enjoyed the weekend. Hope you did too, Kev.
Yeah, as an Eagles fan, yeah, it was an all right weekend, I guess. I think the saving grace was the Dallas result. That was the big one for me. So yeah, but I'm sure you enjoyed the Bucs progressing to the next round.
It was fine, as expected, really, wasn't it? But yeah, the Cowboys one was the cherry on top. I think everybody was pretty happy about that.
Yeah, I think that the teams that went out of the playoffs this week, there's been a lot of fan bases that are notorious of being eliminated from the playoffs. So I think a lot of the neutrals are very happy with the results this past weekend. So we have got an amazing show today. On today's show, we welcome on one of the biggest grinders in the fantasy community, the queen of the weekly live football blog over at NBC Sports Edge, and the fantasy analyst for the fantasy footballers, fantasy pros, and many more. You'll recognize her voice from our podcast intro music. We give a warm Fantasy Wildcard welcome to the amazing Lauren Carpenter, who you can follow on Twitter at StepmonLauren. Our first guest of 2022. How are you doing?
I'm great. I am your first guest of 2022. That is so exciting. Go me. And I was going to ask if you used my voice in the intro and outro songs, but I didn't want to be all hurt if you didn't. So I'm glad I know now.
No, you're in both the intro and outro, and actually we get quite a few comments saying, "Oh, that's a very smooth voice you've got there. Very interesting."
Not
voice.
Right now, but it was then. I luckily don't sound as much like a man as I have done for the last month. It's been very awful. But Matt, you were saying too how it's nice to be able to kick back and watch football. So One of the things I do for NBC Sports, besides their daily dose on Friday morning that comes out, I stay up and I write that. It's nice to actually watch a game and not have to update the website. Yeah. So one of the things that I do is called their fantasy blog. And I have it basically on the red zone. And like whatever big plays, we have like 7 TVs in my house. And I get one for me for the red zone. And then I have we have all these people come over all the time and we have all these games on. And I literally update their fantasy blog article every 2 or 3 minutes with like the biggest plays, scoring plays, turnovers, touchdowns, field goals, you name it. And I'm doing it in real time throughout all of the 1 o'clock games and all of the 4 o'clock games. That's all I do. Like if I go and pee, I miss like 6 touchdowns. And I'm like, what happened? And I'm trying to play catch up. Yeah, so it was really nice. It was really nice on this super wild card weekend. I had moments of anxiety where I was like, I should be working. And then as soon as a big play would happen, I'm like, oh, I have to update. No, I don't. No, I don't. I don't have to do any of that. I can just enjoy football. This is super fun. I remember what it's like now.
That's amazing. I guess if Scott Anson's ever ill, you can fill it on Red Zone as well, and it'll be smooth.
Yeah, I can't do what they do. I actually watched the one with Andrew Siciliano. He's a little bit easier for me to follow when I write, so I like to follow Andrew. But both of those gentlemen, I don't know how they do it. Like I can't. I mean, I have people I boss around. I'm like, get me a plate of food, fetch me a beverage. Like I wouldn't be able to just. I mean, I talk a lot. That would be easy for me to do, but I would get so confused, and I'd be like, I don't know, who is that guy? How long was that? I have no idea what just happened. Someone make me a drink. Like that'd be my life.
That's amazing. So obviously you'll know a lot about last season, the 2021 season. That's what we're going to focus on today. We'll be looking at and discussing the winners of the 2021 Fantasy Awards as chosen by our guest Lauren. So there's no pressure on us 3 guys. We can just kick back and pick apart your selections. But looking at the show sheet, you've made some cracking picks. So we'll jump straight in and we'll look at the Rookie of the Year. So who have you got as your Rookie of the Year, Lauren?
I think this one's hands down pretty easy. It's Jamar Chase. I mean, wow. And I especially love all of the preseason hullabaloo about how like he can't catch a football anymore. It's like, what are you even talking about? He has done so much for fantasy, but he's done so much for that offense for the Bengals. And I think the confidence that he has been able to instill in Joe Burrow, again, real football and fantasy football, because now everyone is a fantasy asset just thanks to Jamar Chase. Not just to mention Jamar Chase himself is an incredible fantasy asset that you likely got later rounds in your drafts. You didn't have to, reach too far to grab him, especially with all the preseason BS that was going on about how he can't play football anymore, which is funny. They're like, there's no stripes, whatever, get over it. He's fine. So yeah, Jamar Chase, he is my Rookie of the Year award winner. Kind of easy pickings there, like low hanging fruit.
No, fully agree with this one. Maybe the only other candidate that I would have put forward is Najee Harris, obviously coming off that near 1,700 yard from scrimmage season, finishes the RB3.
But it's the Steelers.
True, and obviously he got a very heavy workload, and I agree with you. I think when it comes to picking these rookies, wide receivers, I think if they manage to do what Chase has done, I think you have to go with that young wide receiver that's achieved what he hasn't. I think it's crazy as well that we're completely overlooking Jalen Waddle, despite having his 1,000+ yard season. I mean, it just goes to show what a season. It just goes to show what a season Chase has had. Finishes the wide receiver 5, 1,455 receiving yards. That's the record most receiving yards by a rookie, beating obviously his former LSU teammate Justin Jefferson by 55 yards, although he did have that extra game, obviously, but 13 touchdowns as well. I mean, it's unreal, really, from a rookie wide receiver. I think we've been blessed with these past couple of years. And then just from looking at the fantasy side of it, obviously, I think he's carried a lot of teams to fantasy championships. We saw in week 17 what he did, a whopping 266 receiving yards, 3 touchdowns, and that resulted in 55.6 fantasy points if you're playing PPR league. So again, just incredible. And as I say, he likely won your championship with that performance. And then he's continued it as well this past week. We've just mentioned the wildcard week, playing against the Las Vegas Raiders, 9 receptions, 116 yards. I mean, he's just looking absolutely unstoppable right now. You mentioned it, that connection that he's got with Joe Burrow, obviously the time that they had together in college, it's come to fruition straight away in the NFL. And yeah, Chase has been incredible. The season as a whole has been incredible. I mean, I'm going to try and pick one knock against Chase. It's hard. Obviously, we've said what a great season he's had, but he had 6 games with less than 50 receiving yards. I mean, yeah, that's just saying that sounds crazy. I mean, a rookie wide receiver, and I'm slamming him for having 6 games with less than 50 yards. But yeah, that's the only knock I've got really against him. But with that in mind, Lauren, do you think that 2021 wide receiver 5 finishes his ceiling in terms of fantasy, or do you think maybe he can actually reach the overall wide receiver 1 in terms of fantasy in the not too distant future?
I think he can. And I do not believe that this is his ceiling, especially since, we just keep repeating this. He's a rookie still. Yeah. This is his first season in the NFL on a team that's not led by someone like Tom Brady, who's a veteran, who knows what they're doing. This is a chemistry building team that I think is only going to continue to get better. So next year, when I'm on your podcast again, throwing that out there, we'll be talking about how he only had 1 or 2 games with less than 55 or 50 yards, whichever one it was that you said. And I think this is just a starting point for him, barring injury. Knock on wood, that doesn't happen, because he's an incredibly talented. Jalen Waddle too. That was another one that just right over. It just Jamar Chase. That's all I had.
Absolutely.
So that's amazing. I mean, I've got to agree as well. Jamar Chase is the outstanding candidate in my eyes. I think the talent actually lies further than the actual stats. I think there's more to come from him. Whereas a guy like Waddle, maybe this is the best season he ever has. So that's one to ponder. What's your thoughts on it, Ali?
Yeah, but it couldn't be anybody else. I think, as Lauren mentioned, we've been blessed with some rookies the last couple of years. And to be honest, Chase blew my expectations out the window. He's flew up my rankings, definitely my dynasty wide receiver 1. And as you mentioned, I think he can be that wide receiver 1 overall in next season. I think they're only going to get better, and I think he's going to get more consistent. So you won't see them games with under 50 yards going forward. I think they're just going to grow as a unit. I think him and T. Higgins are really important players in Dynasty, and yeah, he's only going to get better.
Indeed. So we've spoke about Chase here, who's got the potential to be the number 1 at his position. Now we're going to move on to the bust of the year, which is a guy that's been the number 1 at his position in the past, but maybe has burnt his owners this season and previously. So Lauren, who have you got as your bust of the year?
I normally never do this, and I'm just going to preface this. I don't like putting players on a bust category who have been injured. That really, really bugs me, but I made an exception here for Christian McCaffrey. This is getting so old, and I can't, because it's not like this was just a first-round pick. This was the number 1 overall pick again, and it did it to us again. And I completely understand it's not like he's going out attempting to get injured, but this is getting so old, and I'm sick of it, and I'm tired of it, and he is my bust candidate. I normally never, ever, ever attribute someone in the bust category who's injured, but I'm over it, Christian. I don't care how hot you are. We're done. We are done. I'm over it. Over it.
Me personally, I had an awards tweet on my page, and I got absolute pelters when I didn't have Christian McCaffrey as my bust this year. I had Allen Robinson, but because, as you mentioned, you didn't like to pick someone who had an injury, but I think the fact that he's had 2 seasons now where he's absolutely busted, I think he's every right to be the bust this year. So in hindsight, I probably should have picked him. Someone that went 101 pick in a lot of leagues this season.
That's a good one. That's a good one.
And as I mentioned, he's not only been a bust this year, it's been a bust for 2 seasons now. He's just played 10 games in 2 years. For someone who was so generational for fantasy football, it really took fantasy football to a new level back in 2019 when he had that outstanding year. 1,387 yards rushing and 1,005 yards receiving, as well as just them 19 touchdowns. So there's reason why he went 101 last year and this year, but he's just crushed people's fantasy seasons if they took him with their first couple of picks. And I think it opens up a really strange world this coming next season where he's likely to drop into uncharted territory and really drop down a good few spots in the first round. I think he could be an absolute bargain and one of the best values when it comes to the draft next season if you want to take a risk, but that's not going to be a consolation prize for anyone that took him this year or even last year.
I took him this year. It was the very first year that I've had Christian McCaffrey, not in just one league, but in several leagues. I'm not happy about that choice because I was like, no, this is this terrible decision. At first, it was great because I was like, yes, awesome. But in the one league that I won this year was my big money league, and I ended up winning it. But my first 4 picks were Christian McCaffrey, Chris Godwin. I don't know if it's in this right order, but Christian McCaffrey, Chris Godwin, Darren Waller, and there was another one that got hurt. I can't remember off the top of my head. I won with Jarrett Patterson and Boston Scott against Jonathan Taylor and Alvin Kamara. Let's not forget Taysom Hill as my quarterback up against Justin Herbert. Sweated that whole entire weekend. But yeah, just like the first 4 rounds of my entire team gone. I'm like, you got to be kidding me.
Wow.
Oh, God.
I mean,
Calvin Ridley, that's who it was.
Oh, crikey. That's another subject entirely. But
the
annoying thing is when Christian McCaffrey was actually in, he was really decent. So you were happy to get him back. And then he quickly went out again. He averaged 18.2 points per game. So he was doing well when he was in the games.
And he's my bust too because he's stressful. Like it's because at any minute you're like, oh my God, there goes his hamstring. Like he's just literally taking a sip of water and you're like, oh my God, don't hurt yourself. And it's so hard to watch a game when he's in it because you just know at any second he's going to be like, my hammy, and then like walk out. And you're like, there goes my entire week. Why did I put myself through this? That's the drama. It's very dramatic.
So not only was it bust, he was completely stressful for the whole year.
Oh my God, yeah.
I think he's the only person who can receive this prestigious award tonight. So
most stressful player of the year.
Yeah.
Cheers.
My question to you, Lauren, is so when you come to drafting next season, is he still going to be in play for you in round 1? If so, how high would you take him?
Yes, of course. He will be in play. I will draft him again, and then I'll lament this choice that I've made because in the offseason, I'm going to go back and be like, but he was so amazing. And it's going to be like, I love Christian McCaffrey. And then if it does fall to me, top 5, I would be shocked if he went any further than that. I'll just be stressed out about it still, and I'll just blame him for my copious drinking. That's it.
Always good to have an excuse.
Exactly. You've gained like 10 pounds from all this booze. Blame Christian McCaffrey, okay? They're like, what? That doesn't make any sense.
That's an amazing story about how your fantasy team, it's just exactly how you planned it with Jared Patterson and Boston Scott.
Jared Patterson, Boston studs, man. My other running back was David Montgomery, who was the only semi-healthy back that I had, but I didn't have him for a little while either. It was like, good gracious.
Wow. Yeah. I've got to agree. I think McCaffrey, both in redraft and dynasty, is going to be a value for the people that want to take a bit of a risk and shoot for upside. So yeah, bust of the year. I'm in full agreement with this. What about you, Matt?
Yeah, I think it's definitely got to be bust of the year. Bust of the last 2 years, really. Like we've mentioned, the fact that he's only played 10 games is crazy. Looking forward as well, I think you've got to start thinking, are the Panthers really going to risk giving him that heavy workload again? I mean, it's 2 seasons in a row, like I say, that he's gone down here. Are they still going to be happy to feed him the ball? Do they maybe start using Chuba Hubbard a little bit more and getting him a little bit more involved, just try and take that workload off him and try and keep him for a full season? So that's something.
If he stops running like he's running through houses, I think this could be limited. I think it could. Like he literally is like brick wall, run through it, rah! And you're like, oh my God, he's gonna die. It's awful. Sorry. Yeah. Absolutely. I'm still obviously stressed out about it.
It's ever since he did that modeling last off season, he's lost his durability. So
I can't unsee that picture of him in bed with the handkerchief around his neck. Like I can't unsee that. I would like to Photoshop that off and then admire, but I can't with the kerchief. That's not right. No, that's poor choice. Poor choices.
Indeed it is. So we're now going to move on to our next category as chosen by you, Lauren, the 2021 breakout of the year. So who have you got?
Okay. This one was really tough for me because I'm glad I went through the other categories before I answered this one. But from breakout, I'm going to go Deebo Samuel. And I know that it's not necessarily perfectly in line with the term of breakout here, but he stayed healthy. He crushed every single game. And I wanted him to be highlighted in the breakout category because of what he was able to do in the run game. So not only do we know that he is a great receiving threat, I mean, we've already known this for quite some time, but he really showcased his running ability just as a pure runner. So for me, I have him in this category as a breakout because now we can really see what he can do, not only through the air, but on the ground as well. And that was eye-opening for me when it came to how incredibly valuable Deebo Samuel is in fantasy.
Yeah, I was so pleased that Deebo got a mention on today's show. An awesome season.
By the way, he has the nicest skin I have ever seen. That makes me so mad because as a lady, I've got to put on makeup. And then just to leave my house, unless I'm going to Walmart, then that doesn't count. But even in front of the camera, this is excess makeup because the light washes you out. You look at Deebo Samuel, he is perpetually airbrushed. I'm like, what do you use on your flesh to make it look like you are an 8-year-old boy? Your skin is so amazing. Every time I see him, I'm just like, wow, what products do you use? Like, I'm so jealous. I can't. Not a scar, not a pore. Like, is he real? Or is he an android? Maybe he's not even real.
I think he shares products with Jimmy G.
I don't know. And Tom Brady, I don't even know. Like, why are you getting younger? This is weird. Learn aging, please, so that I don't feel so bad about my gray hair and my wrinkles. Thank you. But yeah, his beautiful skin. Continue.
Yeah, Deebo's a good-looking dude, I guess, and it's been a good-looking season he's had as well. I think last show I mentioned it could be a candidate for comeback player of the year, but I think breakout player of the year is a really nice consolation.
I could have put him in a ton of categories in here, but I thought this one was the good because of the rushing.
And before the season, many predicted that Brandon Ayuk could be a better player this season, but it's actually been the flip of that. It's been an absolute breakout for Deebo. He went from wide receiver 34 as a rookie to wide receiver 46 in an injury at sophomore season, then wide receiver 3 this season. Like you mentioned, Lauren, he's doing it as a receiver, a runner, a passer. It's also the second most consistent.
That's right.
It's just a Swiss Army knife, isn't it? He's a dual threat, a triple threat, in fact. So
take some notes, Taysom Hill.
And he's actually
a better pass than Taysom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Literally.
And he's been so consistent as well. He's had 8 wide receiver 1 weeks, and he's also hit double-digit fantasy points every week of the season and the playoffs. So there is some minor concerns. Trey Lance, how's that going to look when he enters the starting lineup? The run-heavy approach that's likely going to follow that, and also the durability we mentioned as potentially getting more running back snaps. But overall, he's a great asset to own in Dynasty and your seasonal leagues. Plus, his game script proof, and he's only just turned 26 years old. obviously he's using a lot of products to look younger than 26 years old.
Evil.
So my question to you, Lauren, is with him having his career year this season, wide receiver 3 overall, he's extremely likely to regress the future season. So I just want to know, what wide receiver finish in 2022 would you consider to be a good season for Deebo?
I can see him finishing as a wide receiver 1 or very high upside wide receiver 2. But I'm curious to see what platforms are going to switch his designation to wide receiver and running back. So I'm very curious to see where that's going to go with Deebo Samuel, because we've seen that before. And I believe my next candidate on the award show that we're having right now. And I don't know, but I can definitely, it's going to depend on Trey Lance, because if Trey Lance is obviously going to be the quarterback moving forward, I think he will be relying more on his legs. He, meaning Deebo Samuel, will be relying a little bit more in the run game as opposed to the passing game. So I think that will limit his ceiling as a receiver, but not necessarily as a fantasy scorer, because he can play both sides incredibly efficiently and very well. So it's a trick question there. Just, it's going to depend.
I think it's a great thing to consider and ponder as well. Obviously, I won't spoil the fun that's coming up in a little bit, but there is a player that's going to be coming up later in the show with similar attributes, we'll say. So, yeah, breakout of the year. What's your thoughts? I'll come to you first, Ali.
Yeah, it couldn't be anybody else for me. I chose him for my awards. I think a breakout just because he's hardly been a wide receiver 3, but wide receiver 34 finish in his rookie season. And then he had a disaster season last season with the injury. So to finish at wide receiver 3, that's a massive breakout for me. I mean, only our Matt called it. Me and you, Kev, we were. I think we were heavily on Brandon Ayuk breaking out this year, and it didn't quite happen. He was in the doghouse for half a year. But yeah, just Deebo, amazing player. Unfortunately, I've not got any shares with him in Dynasty, so I need to certainly change that going forward.
Ooh.
And was Deebo the selection for you, Matt, or was it another 49ers running back?
No, I think it had to be Deebo Samuel. I appreciate the pat on the back there, Ali, for me mentioning Deebo, but I never could have predicted this, what we've just seen from Deebo. So I mean, wide receiver 3, it's unbelievable. Like we said, the fact that he's being used in the run game as well as the receiving game, and moving forward, that is going to be one of those players that it doesn't matter what situation the team's in. If they're behind, obviously they're going to be throwing the ball. Deebo's going to be there, and even if they're trying to control the game, running the ball, again, Deebo's going to be used in the running game. So he's just it's just great to see a player like Deebo being used the correct way, and that we're reaping the rewards as fantasy players and getting those points. So yeah, had to be Deebo Samuel for me.
I'm so glad I nailed this. Yes.
You nailed it. You nailed it.
I clearly need positive reinforcement in my life, so just go with it.
That's perfect. So I've touched on it on Deebo then about he was potentially a comeback player of the year, and that's our next category, the 2021 comeback player of the year. So who have you got?
Okay, so this one was another hard one too, because I love Good Morning Football, and Peter Schrager from Good Morning Football on the NFL Network, he brought up a really good point that he would love to have a player in the comeback player of the year that wasn't formally injured. Unfortunately, the player that stuck out the most to me goes in another category. So I'm skipping him yet again because he could be in this category as well, but he's not. I'm going with Joe Burrow. We brought up Ja'Marr Chase already. For me, seeing Joe Burrow come back from a horrific knee injury. Did he even have a knee? Arlene, I don't even know what happened to him. Like, everything was torn, shredded pieces. Yeah. For him to come back and have that kind of poise that he can have in the pocket as somebody like who has been injured before, it is very difficult mentally to not worry about it. It's hard. Like, I fell off a horse one time and the horse stepped on me and I broke my ribs. And it was very difficult for me to get back on a horse after that because I was always scared. So I know it's kind of apples and oranges here, but it's the same kind of mentality. And luckily he did have that safety valve in Ja'Marr Chase. They also had Joe Mixon, who had a really good year as well. And their O-line stepped up. That was my biggest concern during the draft, is that they didn't go for an offensive lineman. They instead got his number one weapon from college, which I definitely understand, especially now. Hindsight is very 2020. But I was like, Bengals, what are you doing? I can't believe you. You're not going to protect your poor quarterback who like literally is like dead on the field. That's horrible. But he did a really good job. And not only that, they got to the playoffs for the first time in 31 years. And this is a second-year quarterback who really didn't play that much in the league last year. He played 4 games, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Ridiculous. So he's basically a rookie. It's crazy what he has been able to do at such an age with such poise. Still got a little bit of snarky character, which I like as well. I think he's super fun. But yeah, he is my number 1 comeback player of the year.
Yeah, I think maybe for the first half of the season, Dak Prescott, he was the firm favourite to win comeback player of the year. Another player that obviously coming off a really brutal injury, but obviously we know he went on a bit of a slump in that second half. And Joe Burrow, I mean, he just turned it on in the second half, finished QB2.
Lights it up. Like the Jets turn on and you're like, wow, it's crazy.
Yeah. QB2 through weeks 12 to 17, finished QB7 overall in fantasy. A little bit like we said with Chase as well. I think he's going to be a guy that's carried a lot of people to the fantasy titles, averaged 28.6 fantasy points per game and finished as the QB1 during the fantasy playoff stretch. So again, another player that's just absolutely carried you to the championship. And if you've got that stack, I mean, that Bengals stack, wow, you were looking unstoppable, I think, in the playoffs. Obviously, like you mentioned, being a huge part of the fact that the Bengals have made it to the playoffs and managing to get the first win in the playoffs in 31 years this past week. It's just incredible. And yeah, awesome comeback season. Looking forward as well, the future's really exciting with Burrow and this offense. It's a young, exciting offense, like you mentioned, Lauren. They've got Chase, Higgins, Tyler Boyd as well, and obviously Mixon. It's just really exciting offense. Spoke a little bit earlier about Chase and that unreal rookie season that he's had, but yeah, Burrow, he's got guys all over the field that can just rack up them fantasy points. So
yeah, and if Jamar Chase doesn't get it done, as we've seen in his 6 games of 50 something fewer yards, it was T. Higgins or it was Tyler Boyd, who was also somewhat fantasy relevant when we were all worried in the offseason he would just disappear. So
no, fully agree. Fully agree with you on that.
I hit that mute button right in time.
So yeah, my question back to you, Lauren. I just mentioned a little bit earlier Dak Prescott. So I'm interested to know, who do you think has the better 2022 season, Joe Burrow or Dak Prescott?
Oh, Joe Burrow. For me, again, health aside, it's going to
nice
be
and easy.
It's going to be Joe Burrow. Yeah.
So you don't want to have a little. So you don't want to think about that a little bit, Lauren?
Nope, not at all. Nope. I'm so there's 3 teams that I think are incredibly overrated, and it's the Cowboys, the Cardinals, and the Rams. The Rams are starting to earn that reputation, especially after that annihilating victory over the Cardinals that we watched. But the Cardinals have been overhyped. You know, they did this the season before as well. They start off on fire, then they plummet, and the Cowboys are the Cowboys. I don't know what is going on with Jerry Jones. That's a whole nother podcast we can talk about. Oh my goodness gracious. Sorry, all you Cowboys fans out there. Actually, you're part of the problem. I'll just be honest. You guys are freaking nuts. So there's that. But yeah, no, Dak, he has some growing to do. He has some things that he needs to work on. I think he has the talent, but for me, there's something special about what Joe Burrow has created for the Bengals and what this momentum is going to do for them moving forward, that I think his opportunity, barring health, is going to be a lot more rich than it is for the Cowboys. The Cowboys have problems they've got to address. The Bengals do not. They're just on an upward trajectory.
Yeah, I've got to admit, I've not been the biggest Joe Burrow fan of all time, but I am coming around. I'm coming around to him.
Tiger King.
Yeah, I did a little battle rap about him where I give him some grief, but yeah, I think, to be honest, you've made some great points again. It's his first full season. The weapons are young. He's going to continue to grow with them. I think Cowboys, there's a lot that's not right there. There's what's happening with Cooper and Gallup as well. I think Mike McCarthy. Personally, I think it's an easy choice, Burrow over Dak. I wouldn't have Burrow right at the top. He's not in that top 5 yet for me, but he's on his way there. He's
on his way
a lot this season.
Yep.
And I just wonder as well, like, what happens with these 2 QBs? Do you think they'll ever get back to the point where they are going to be rushing again, or not? Because before the injuries, Dak was a dual threat QB. Burrow flashed it at LSU and in his first year, but I just wonder if a year older, a year stronger, if they actually come back and become dual threat running backs, QBs.
I saw a couple of games where they did have quarterback designed runs, but I think they want to keep him as healthy as possible. So I think that for both of these quarterbacks, the idea of having a true dual threat like a Kyler Murray, like a Jalen Hurts is not in their future. But they're still young enough and athletic enough that they can have some very creative design runs around the quarterback. Unlike someone like Aaron Rodgers or Tom Brady or, Big Ben when he was Treebeard from Lord of the Rings, him trying to run around. It was like, with his massive legs. Like, what do you do? And he's knock-kneed too. Have you ever noticed that? Like, how do you run at all? Like, your knees are touching, but like your feet are like 2 feet apart. That is not comfortable looking watching him lumber like to a first down that was only 2 yards away and it took you 20 minutes to get there. Anyway, happy retirement, Ben. But so I think their youth is going to help them with creative plays, but I don't see them being those dual threat quarterbacks.
I think it's a little bit like yourself, Lauren, like you mentioned with the horse accident. It's hard to get back on that horse, and it's hard to get that confidence. I think to try and run the ball. Obviously, with the injuries that they had, it's got to be in the mind. It has to be. I think it's impossible not for him to have it in the back of their mind at some point when they're running and they've got a defender running towards them at full pace. There's got to be something in the back of the mind. So yeah,
it really did help. It really did help that the next horse I got on after I was healed up was like probably 30 years old, retired trail horse. He just stood there and it was like, oh, hey, thanks for the carrot. What am I supposed to do? And I'm like, nothing, just don't walk or move. I'm just going to sit here for a minute. And he's like, cool, munch grass. That was easy. We didn't actually do much moving for like 2 weeks. It was just getting on and then getting back off.
Quality stuff, that. And speaking of old horses, that brings us nicely onto our next category, which is the 2021 Veteran of the Year. So which old horse are you hanging your hat on this time?
Oh my God. Okay. Cordell Patterson. I can't hold his name in any longer. It's Cordell Patterson. He was going to be my breakout candidate. Then he was going to be my other candidate, but I'm like, no, this is perfect for where he needs to be. Cordell Patterson. I was on this hype train early. And no one bought in with me. But I say no one. I'm exaggerating. A few people bought in with me. But Dan Harris from Fantasy Pros, he and I had like a little argument about it on Stage's Discord. And I was like, no, this is the real deal. He's like, no, absolutely not. I'm like, oh my God. Okay, like Zeke is? Okay, stop it. Whatever. Yeah, that's for another time. But yeah, it was Cordell Patterson. He checks off all the boxes. He is 30, which met your requirement for a veteran. And he is getting it done. I really wanted him to be the comeback player of the year as well, because he didn't have to go through injuries during that kind of an idea. But he did have to go through getting seen and getting playing time. And he took every single moment on a completely crappy, horrible offense and actually made some things happen. How? I don't know, but he magically did. It was impressive.
Yeah, it was fantastic. I was hoping we were going to have an extra category for even older Veteran of the Year players, 40 plus, and we could have talked about Brady, but we'll stick to
that. Was a little too low hanging fruit because there's several that I could have gone there. Actually, there's only like 4, but I'd be like Andrew Whitworth,
yeah,
Veteran of the Year.
But certainly, veteran player, we could have had one for best waiver wire pickup award, which would have been Patterson as well. I think he deserves a whole list of honours this season. And I think he's ended up on a lot of teams that reached the latter stages of the playoffs this year. I mean, those that were able to grab him off waivers after that week 2 performance at that big week, they certainly reaped the rewards, and he ended up as an RB1 or wide receiver 1, however you want to call him. Finished as the RB9 in PPR, which is just an amazing result, which he could have finished even higher, to be honest, had he not been for his season running out of steam from week 15 onwards. Mm-hmm. But the RB9 finish certainly has come out of nowhere. I mean, his previous best of RB26 in his second year as a pro with the Vikings, that was back in 2013, so it's a long time ago now. And since then, he's been bouncing around the league. He's now on his 5th team, and he's mainly been used as a kick returner and emergency backup running back.
Why? I don't understand why he's so good. Like, he is an amazing receiver. Some of his catches, I'm like, dude, you look like you're 300 pounds. How did you get that high off the ground? Like, one-handed snag. And he's like, it's nothing. What? Keeps running, like, just knocking people over, like, get out of my way. And you're like, wow, he's a monster. Yeah. It was great.
I mean, just the amount of kickoff returns he's run in for a touchdown. I think he's up to double figures now. when he gets up ahead of steam, I mean, I'm not going to stop get in his way and stop him. So it's confusing. And as you mentioned, he was certainly one of the only bright spots on offense for Atlanta this season, and just came at such a value too. They paid him just $3 million on a 1-year deal. So I do think it's likely that he's going to have plenty of suitors come this free agency this off season. So I think it's going to be really interesting to see where he lands. And I think that just trying to rank him in Dynasty is going to be really difficult, and just trying to figure out where he goes in drafts next season, I think is at the minute it's just impossible. I think his range of outcomes for 2022 is pretty vast, depending on how a team's going to use him. And I think it all depends on free agency to see where he lands. So my question to you, Lauren, is just say for argument's sake that he stays in Atlanta and signs a new deal with them. Do you think he can repeat and be a RB1 next season?
Yes, I think.
We've made
I think it is possible. I think it is possible that he can finish, in that RB1 to 12. I think that's an opportunity. But like you said, he did run out of steam there, and it was not because of any fault of his or injury or anything like that. It was because of how I was going to say the other word, how absolutely crappy that team was. I think they have one more year with Matt Ryan, so there's not like there's that many things changing here, but they really need Calvin Ridley back. And this will be a second year for Kyle Pitts as well, which will be able to open up some more opportunities, I think, for Cordell Patterson. So we'll see. I think it's in the cards, though. Am I going to guarantee it? No. I guarantee nothing when it comes to the Falcons.
No.
Yeah, I love the veteran pick of Cordell Patterson. I think I'm on the other side with the RB1. I can't personally see it. I think the Falcons are going to take someone in the draft. There's other parts of that team that are interesting. Calvin Ridley, will he come back? Kyle Pitts, will he continue to grow? So, yeah, if I was going to be a betting man, I'd bet against Cordell Patterson next season, which is a shame because this comeback this season, this veteran comeback has been outstanding. What's your thoughts on veteran of the year, Matt?
Yeah, I mean, Ali kind of mentioned it. We could just name Tom Brady every year, couldn't we, as veteran player? I mean, just never seems to stop. But yeah, I think for this one, Cordell Patterson's a great selection, a guy that, as well as just come from nothing, really, not really being fantasy relevant for so long now, and what he's been able to do this year has been incredible. It makes you think, why didn't a team figure this out earlier? We could have seen him maybe in his prime, 26, 27, and could have been doing what Deebo Samuel's been doing. He's the same kind of player. So yeah, definitely one of the top veteran players that we've seen. And yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see what happens next year.
I'm like a dual identity girl. Like, I love Deebo Samuel. I love Cordell Patterson. It's like, you can fix a toilet and cook dinner? Yeah, I'm in. Sign me up.
We're all ready for Tavon Austin next year. We're ready for it.
Love it. So we get from Tavon Austin to the most prestigious award, the 2021 Fantasy MVP, the best player this season for fantasy. And we'll pass it back to you, Lauren. Who's your fantasy MVP for the 2021 season?
Low-hanging fruit here, but this is pretty obvious. It's Cooper Kupp. It is Cooper Kupp. Wow, what a season that young man is having so far. And literally, I think he should be MVP of the NFL because he is the most valuable player on that Rams team. He is the most valuable player. Matt Stafford would not be able to do what he's been doing, even though he's been throwing a bunch of pick sixes and interceptions. Having that threat in the passing game allows someone like OBJ to make waves, allows someone like Van Jefferson to make waves. It also opens up the run game. He is the most valuable player. And especially for me, he was the most valuable fantasy player on my team that I won my big 1 league with because I had Deebo Samuel and Cooper Kupp, which are the only things that kept me afloat. Thank you, Jesus. But yeah, Cooper Kupp it is. That one's kind of an easy one. But yeah, he's crushing it. I love Cooper Kupp. Kind of goofy looking, though. I think he needs to trim up the beard just a hair. But, hey, I don't mind. I'm a goofy looking hoe, so why not?
Love that.
As for you, Humboldt.
Yeah, we had an interesting moment of a troll the other day. So
Lauren's converted him, though. So
yeah,
I mean, brilliant.
That's fantastic how he turned a negative to positive, and it's kind of the same with Kupp to be the fantasy MVP, the number one scoring player this season. Wide receivers don't outscore QB1 often. Kupp did it by over 40 points. Some have compared this season to 2019 Michael Thomas. Again, it's way off. He scored 65.9 more fantasy points than Michael Thomas. And then it also squashes Megatron's season. I know Johnson had the yardage, but Cup's monstered him on touchdowns. And Matt Stafford was actually the QB for both Megatron and Cup, so that's quite interesting as well. But yeah, for a wide receiver to average,
like right there, I have a little signed Matt Stafford mini helmet that you can tell I'm very proud of because it's actually hiding behind my New Orleans mask. But it's there.
Oh, I love that. So yeah, for a wide receiver to average 25.9 fantasy points is amazing. Every game he had double digits. He had 16 games where he was averaging at least 16 points, and 12 games as a wide receiver won, which was the most consistent, obviously, with the season he's had. And this was all from a guy with a wide receiver 26 ADP this offseason. Obviously, he was winning leagues for people like Lauren and plenty others as well. So it kind of feels like Cooper Kupp's a bit like a Scooby-Doo villain in my eyes. I think we're going to pull off his mask and find out it was really Pete J. Rice underneath that mask all along. But seriously, what a season. 100% deserves to be the MVP. So I want to sort of get your thoughts on next year, Lauren, on if you had to predict next year's fantasy MVP, the player who will dominate the competition and win you your leagues. Who are you going to predict, Lauren?
Okay, I took me forever, when I read this question, because I was like, there's so many options. And I realized, like, the two that stand out the most in my head, actually three, are all on the Rams. And I'm like, is this just recency bias because I just talked about Cooper Kupp? But it's not. I think it's either going to be Cam Akers or it's going to be Cooper Kupp again, or it could possibly be our boy Bobby Trees. I think that Robert Woods has the opportunity to be able to dominate once he is back from his injury. Don't forget, last year, they played a very interesting 12 personnel offensive scheme that allowed for really Robert Woods to dominate in that offense. And he did very well. And then Cooper Kupp snap counts kind of went down. Well, now there is no Robert Woods. OBJ does not threaten what Robert Woods does. And I think he comes back, makes that offense even more dynamic just for real football, which we don't really care about anyway. But I'm just saying, just so you know. And I think that Robert Woods will be able to do that flip-flop. Like they've done that before how they've finished. And I'm wondering if we're going to see that from Robert Woods again once he comes back. And now the defenses are so incredibly scheme-oriented around Cooper Kupp, this could leave a lot of opportunity for either OBJ or Robert Woods to make a huge impact.
That's very, very interesting. That I know.
A little spicy.
Yeah, it is. I like it. Bobby Woods. What's your thoughts, Matt, on next season's fantasy MVP if you're picking?
I mean, I weren't prepared for this one, Kev. So,
Michael Carter.
Well, I mean, that's
I was going to say Jalen Waddle. I was going to do a whole bunch, but I'm like, nah, I'm sticking with the Rams.
I like your thinking. I think I should go with my boy Michael Carter. I really like what Lauren's just said with Cam Akers. We might talk a little bit more about him later on, but that's a guy as well. I think that could maybe be slightly overlooked and can make that jump forward next season, coming back from the injury. But yeah, as far as this one goes, I think Cooper Kupp, it had to be Cooper Kupp. Like you said, Kev, the fact that we've got a player beating a quarterback in terms of fantasy points is basically unheard of. But then for it to be a wide receiver, usually it's running backs that get up here. Obviously, we know Christian McCaffrey's done it before, and Saquon Barkley when he was in his prime as well, before all the injuries. So yeah, for a wide receiver to do that is incredible, and I think he has to be the MVP.
Fantastic, Ali. Who's your prediction?
Well, I'm not going to say a Buccaneers player.
In the full attire.
Yeah.
Tom Brady.
I'm probably just going to go boring and say Jonathan Taylor. Just took it to another level again this year. For me, he's the best pure running back in the league behind that awesome offensive line. I think he's going to dominate next year. I think I'd love to see Derrick Henry be dominant again and just stay healthy for the year because the pace he was on was just incredible. But yeah, I'll just say Jonathan Taylor and give a bit of a boring answer. But yeah, I love the fact that you mentioned Robert Woods. I was in my Scott Fishbowl draft and I was so excited to try and I was one pick away from picking Robert Woods and the guy in front of me sniped me and I was absolutely gutted. And then I took Cooper Kupp and
I'm sure you're fine now.
So I've gone over it since, but yeah, that's
Well, I was just going to say another one. So I'm in my office here and my cat has been hanging out with me. And one of my very good friends, Josh Hudson, he got me a signed Alvin Kamara jersey for my birthday, and the cat has just reminded me that he thinks it's Alvin Kamara who should be the fantasy MVP. I wanted my cat O'Reilly to have some say in who he predicts, and he thinks it's going to be Kamara. Probably just because it's something that's not supposed to be on the couch, ergo he must sleep on it. Like anything. Doesn't matter.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah, I love the Robert Woods selection, actually. I'm actually one of these psychopaths that's in a startup draft right now, and I've got Bobby Woods on my team. So
you're crazy.
So yeah, thanks for endorsing that and putting my mind at ease. and if I had to make a quick selection, I'd say Travis Etienne, one to watch out for.
Oh, that's a good one, Kev. Ooh, I can't wait to do draft prep. Oh my God, I'm so excited for the summer. Yay! I love research. I'm such a dork.
Awesome. So we now come on to the wildcard selection, where we get our guests to pick out one player they believe will be their fantasy wildcard, a player that will improve their dynasty value the most in 2022. Essentially, it's a breakout player that's going to increase massively in value. So for your wildcard selection, Lauren, who are you taking?
Okay. You dynasty folks are crazy. You're weird. You're crazy. I love you, but you're nuts. I literally was in 3 dynasty leagues. I gave all 3 of them up. I'm like, I can't do this. I cannot handle this. I'm way too instant gratification. No. And then like all these trade requests are coming in. I'm like, I don't care. Take my whole team. I don't care. All my picks, whatever. I just don't care. It's February. Yeah. Y'all are crazy. And I even told, I think it was Kev, I was like, I don't know. I don't play dynasty anymore. And he's like, well, how about my guy Cam Akers, who I was just talking about here, which I think we're talking about good value. He's still very young, so he should have some time. Let's hope that Achilles injury stays healthy, because he's been looking really good. He looked very, very good. And I'm hoping that he doesn't flash too much in the playoffs. I hope they limit it and keep his snap counts down, because I want people to be focused on Darrell Henderson and Sony Michel so that Cam Akers can fall through the cracks for redraft and for dynasty. I really, really like Cam Akers.
Yeah, no, I kind of gave the game away, didn't I, in the last section? But yeah, I absolutely love this selection, mainly because I'm a massive Cam Akers truther. But had a really strong end to his rookie season, averaged 15 fantasy points per game from week 12 onwards. But then obviously, like I just mentioned, Lauren tore his Achilles and just before the season started, and that ruled him out for all this season. And we thought it was going to be for even more right leading up to next season. But incredibly made a really impressive comeback from the injury. Somehow managed to play at the end of this season and obviously into the playoffs as well. Just looking at his ADP back in June on DLF, he was RB6. That fell right down to RB32 in September, obviously following that injury. It has crept up, and it's not a surprise really, given the amazing recovery that he's had. He's back up to RB15 in Dynasty ADP at the minute. Like you just mentioned as well, Lauren, coming off that really great game against the Cardinals, 17 carries for 55 yards, and then that one reception for 40 yards. And that was the really impressive play for me, that reception from Odell Beckham of everybody. So, yeah, you mentioned it as well. Still only 22 years old. Definitely still room for him, I think, to improve on that ADP, especially how the Rams use him is going to be a key part of that, I think. So that is my question back to you, Lauren. How do you see this backfield playing out next season? Obviously, we know Akers is coming back off that injury. Do you think he picks up where he left off, and is that workhorse, or do you think it now just becomes a running back by committee moving forward?
I hope it doesn't become a running back by committee. That would be devastating. But it could. But Sean McVay likes to use a hot hand. He likes to use a hot hand. He likes to keep those guys going when they have momentum. So I think that Cam Akers can definitely take this back over. However, it may be a little bit slower to start. So I do expect it to be a committee backfield for at least the first month, 4, maybe 5 weeks. And then one will start to step ahead and really be that go-to. So it'll be frustrating if Cam Akers isn't that guy for the entire season, especially if you have to draft him a little higher if you want him on your team. But he could literally either be a high value RB1, or he is going to be a high value insurance policy in case somebody gets hurt. And now it's his entire backfield. So there's a lot of opportunity. I just don't see Sean McVay doing a true running back by committee like the Eagles have done, and which I don't know why. Why do you still have Miles Sanders? Just stop it.
Yeah, he's not fitting in with that coaching staff. He's gone, I think. I have been off. I've never been on Miles Sanders. I think no. And I don't understand why everyone is obsessed with Miles Sanders. Stop it. No more Miles Sanders.
I don't know why. He's a really nice person too. It's not like I have anything personally against him. It's just like I'm just so sick of all the hype around him. And the poor guy gets hurt because it's Eagles. Sorry. Oh, and believe me, we had like all of my friends that live here and come to our house and watch football. They're all Eagles fans. So I feel you when you guys lost to Tampa, but then cheering to make sure the Cowboys lost. That resonated because that's exactly what happened at my house. My team actually, and I can't believe most of my picks were from the freaking Rams in this show because I'm from St. Louis. My team divorced me to go back to its second wife, who got like blonde hair and a boob job. And now they're like, oh, look, I'm rich. Come back, husband. And they're like, okay, bye. And then, yeah, this left us, it's fine. We're just not football material, I guess.
Yeah. I loved the pick of Cam Akers. I loved how he was used last night, catching that trick play pass from OBJ.
From OBJ.
Loved that. I've just traded for another share of Akers, gave up Mac Jones, so I'm extremely happy about that one. We all love the talent of Akers. We were all gutted for him to see him miss the season. I think he would have absolutely torn it up. And as
it
Matt
was right
mentioned,
after I wrote an article about him too. Like a whole
so it was your
player.
fault.
My fault. It is. I'm cursed. I am cursed. Jake Seeley and I have a thing where like we're both cursed, but like I've literally injured 6 players this season. I mean, it's bad. It started off with Cam Akers and then went like through 5 or 6 players, and then it ended with Derrick Henry because I went to Nashville, Tennessee to go watch him play, and he got hurt the next week. And Jake's like, you had to go to Tennessee to watch the Titans, didn't you? I was like, I did.
Please don't write about Cam Akers this offseason.
I know. Yeah. So I really have to be careful who I write about in the offseason because I'm like, oh God, who am I cursing now? Ugh.
Stay away from Tampa as well.
I know. I'll let you guys know when it is. I'll put it out on my website so you can be like, no, she's done it again.
And as Matt mentioned, he's only 22. He's still younger than old man Najee Harris. It was just great. It was just astounding to see he was able to make it back off such a horrific injury. I do think it's, as long as they don't overuse him in the playoffs or he gets re-injured, I think it sets it up really nicely for that offense to dominate in 2022. And his ADP of RB15 is extremely enticing to me. I think the upside is top 5, definitely, in my opinion. It just depends how McVay uses his backfield next season. And we've seen Henderson and how useful he's been this year when he's had the role. But just how significant will his role be next year? Michelle
Akers is so much more athletic than Darrell Henderson, though. He is so explosive. The way that he can juke and cut is incredible. Also slightly, lower to the ground. Darrell Henderson was really, really good at falling into the end zone. Like, he had that nailed. Like he and Mike Davis. That was so frustrating, by the way. Ew, what a horrible experiment. Yeah, but Cam Akers is explosive. And this team next year, having Robert Woods, Cooper Kupp, OBJ, Van Jefferson, Cam Akers. I mean, stop it. Do I have to become a Rams fan again? Ew.
Oh, no.
Kind of sounds like it.
I know. But see, the problem is my husband is a Lions fan. So the fact that his favorite quarterback of all time went to my hated team of all time, it created a black hole of emotion that I'm dealing with, trying to, anyway, work through these feelings about how much I despise the Rams, but I love Matthew Stafford. So it's like, and my favorite player, my MVP, played for the Rams. Ew, I don't want to be a Rams fan.
But, I mean, was Henderson just a product of the offense? We saw Stoney Michel. He was brilliant, but he's going to be a free agent, so that's an unknown. Personally, I think we're all aboard the Akers hype train entering 2022. So my question to you, Lauren, is would you be happy drafting Cam Akers as your RB1 entering next season, or do you think it is a bit of a risk?
I think that's a little bit of a risk. I have no problem drafting him in the second round, though. If he can fall to me in that second round, I already have a firm idea. I know I call you guys crazy for playing Dynasty. I already know what my draft strategies are going to look like for 2022. This is ridiculous. Wow. But I'm really going to go focus on running back heavy, just, spoiler alert. So it's going to, most people do, that's not really all that. Oh, hi, O'Reilly. Someone just saw my cat. I didn't realize that was my cat, and I saw it through the screen and was like, oh my God, something is about to attack me. Oh, it's just the cat. So I'm going to go running back heavy, and I'm going to target Cam Akers. Another one I'm going to target is Travis Etienne. So those are the ones that I'm going to stockpile, especially after this last year of getting roasted at the running back position. Just roasted. And it's not like I'm ever thin at the RB position. They just all get hurt. and I can't handle it at all. But yeah, I think 1 is a little high, but I would really like him as an RB2 if I can get him. But if I'm in the back of the draft in a 12-person draft and Cam Akers is still there, yeah, I would take him in the first round.
Amazing. That's brilliant. So that brings us to the end of the show. Thank you very much, Lauren. Today we've discussed.
Are we done already?
We're done.
Time flies.
Time flies.
Time flies when you're having fun.
When a cat's about to attack you.
So today's show we've discussed the winners of the 2021 Fantasy Awards as chosen by Lauren. Thank you very much. But before you go, Lauren, please let the audience know where they can find you and anything that you'd like to plug today.
So I work at 6 places. I don't want to rattle them all off because I'll likely forget what it is. And we apparently have to go. So we don't have another 10 minutes for me to tell you where it's at. But you guys can find all of my work on my website, which is stepmomlauren.com. You can even subscribe if you want to get alerts on when I post anything new. I will be working in the off season. I still have a few more articles I'll be writing for NBC Sports Edge, which is very exciting. And on social media, it's at stepmomlauren. It's pretty consistent, just stepmomlauren. But no, I'm not the other one that is not safe for work. That's not me.
Oh.
That's a different stepmom Lauren. I'm the fantasy football stepmom Lauren. I'm not that one. So no weird messages, please. Thank you.
I wonder why you never messaged me about that.
I've managed to get her to page 2. So usually then in the summer when I don't post as much, like she creeps back up to page 1 and I'm like, oh no, lady.
Quality. So is there any closing thoughts from you guys on tonight's show? We'll start with you, Matt.
I just want to say what an absolute pleasure it's been to have Lauren on. I mean, a fantastic guest. Got to find
Even though I
out.
interrupt you all the time, Exhibit A.
It's fine. We get to find out that you appreciate Debo's skin and about your horse injuries. I mean, it's been packed full of information. So yeah, I really appreciate you coming on, Lauren, and the players that you selected. I think we're all in full agreement. So absolutely nailed the selections as well. So yeah, just thank you for coming on with us.
Absolutely. Thank you. Oh, yay.
I
Okay, Allie, your turn. Compliment me.
I just want to say thank you for just being our first guest of 2022. Just one of the hardest working fantasy analysts in the industry. It's just not been an honor to have you on and just start our year off right. So thank you. Personally, I couldn't agree more with your selections and your justifications. So yeah, really enjoyed the show.
Yay, thank you. Oh, I
It's
got
my
the
turn
woman
now.
fuzzies. Oh, stop. Go on.
So yeah, just echoing what the boys said, just want to thank you for coming on. You've brought excitement, charisma, knowledge. You've made some cracking selections. It's the first guest show of 2022. We've got more amazing guests to come, but they've got a lot to live up to with this performance from tonight, Lauren. Make sure that you follow and check out all the great content that Lauren produces. As you mentioned, the website at Stepmom Lauren as well, not that Lauren.
That's why I need to get verified on Twitter. Are you listening, Twitter? Stop keeping me from getting verified. This is a situation. I need to get verified.
Serious.
And like you touched upon earlier, we look forward to having you back on the show next year as well.
Yay,
Yes,
me
please.
too.
So yeah, to the audience, thank you for tuning in. Be sure to subscribe and follow us on Twitter at Fantasy Wildcard. Also leaves a 5-star podcast review if you've enjoyed the show today. It really helps with getting exposure to a wider audience. Thank you. Join us on our next show, which drops the podcast next Tuesday, the 25th of January, and it streams on Wednesday, the 26th at 8 p.m. UK time, where we'll be discussing our hits and misses from the 2021 season. So thank you once again. Have a good one.